June 19, 1944. The Pacific sky shimmered with sunlight as Task Force 58 moved toward the Marianas. American carriers stretched across the horizon, 15 floating airfields, each packed with aircraft and determination. The Japanese Imperial Navy believed they were ready to strike first, confident their famous Zero fighters would once again dominate the skies. What they didn't know was that waiting for them was a new machine, one that would rewrite everything they thought they knew about aerial combat. For years, Japan's Zero fighter had ruled the Pacific. It was light, agile, and deadly in the hands of an experienced pilot. At the start of the war, American pilots couldn't match its speed or maneuverability. From Pearl Harbor to the Coral Sea, the Zero's legend grew with every victory. Its design philosophy was simple: build the lightest aircraft possible, make it fast, and trust the pilot's skill to keep it alive. But that philosophy was about to collide head-on with a very different kind of machine, the Grumman F6F Hellcat. The Hellcat wasn't elegant. It was built like a tank with wings, rugged, powerful, and brutally effective. Under its steel armor sat a 2,000 horsepower Pratt and Whitney double Wasp engine, capable of propelling it to nearly 400 miles per hour. It carried 6.50 caliber Browning machine guns that could tear through enemy planes in seconds. It wasn't the most graceful aircraft in the sky, but it didn't need to be. Its job was to destroy the Zero, and it did exactly that. As dawn broke over the Philippine Sea, Vice Admiral Mark Mitcher ordered his fighter groups into the air. The USS Lexington, Yorktown, Bunker Hill, Enterprise, and others launched hundreds of Hellcats in quick succession. Radar operators aboard the carriers picked up a massive formation approaching from the west, more than 100 Japanese aircraft flying toward the fleet. American pilots received precise intercept coordinates, guided by radar systems that Japan didn't even know existed. For the first time in naval history, air defense was no longer a guessing game, it was a science. Meanwhile, aboard the Japanese carrier Taihu, Lieutenant Sakio Komatsu adjusted his flight gear. His orders were simple: find the American carriers and destroy them. But his squadron was filled with new faces, boys barely out of training, many with less than 100 hours of flight time. They had been rushed through accelerated programs that skipped advanced gunnery and dogfighting lessons. To them, war in the Pacific still felt like 1941. They believed in the Zero's legend, that no American plane could match its grace in the air. They were wrong. At 9:15 a.m., the two forces finally met. American Hellcats dove from above, using radar vectors to position themselves perfectly. Japanese pilots, expecting slow, clumsy opponents, suddenly found themselves outclimbed, outgunned, and outturned at high speeds. Lieutenant Hiroshi Tanaka tried to roll his Zero into a defensive loop, a move that once guaranteed victory, but the Hellcat stayed glued to his tail. The next burst of fire ripped through his fuselage. Flames consumed the plane in seconds. For the first time, Japanese pilots realized that their Zero, once untouchable, had become a death trap. The battle quickly turned into chaos. Hellcats swooped down in disciplined pairs, striking and climbing again before the enemy could respond. Their radios kept formations coordinated, while Japanese pilots, fighting with crackling transmitters or none at all, struggled to maintain control. Some even turned their radios off entirely, relying on hand signals that no one could see in the swirling dogfights. The difference in training and communication turned the battle into a massacre. Within minutes, dozens of Japanese planes fell burning into the ocean below. One American pilot later described it simply: it was like shooting turkeys. The phrase stuck, and the battle would forever be known as the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot, but at the time, no one was laughing. Even seasoned Hellcat pilots were stunned by how easily the enemy folded. They'd been warned of Japan's elite aviators, men trained through years of combat, but those veterans were gone. Most had died at Midway, Guadalcanal, and Rabaul. What faced them now were barely trained replacements thrown into the air against an unstoppable machine. By late morning, Vice Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa launched his second and third waves, hoping to overwhelm the Americans through sheer numbers. But his aircraft never reached the carriers. Radar-guided Hellcats intercepted them miles away. The sky turned into a shooting gallery as Japanese formations disintegrated before ever spotting their targets. Pilots reported losing entire squadrons in minutes. Some got lost en route, flying in circles until their fuel ran dry. For those who reached the fleet, anti-aircraft fire from American ships created walls of exploding steel that made survival impossible. Commander David McCampbell of VF-15 led one of the most devastating air battles of the day. With 12 Hellcats under his command, he intercepted more than 40 enemy planes. In just 20 minutes, his squadron shot down over a dozen Zeros. McCampbell himself claimed 7 kills before running out of ammunition. His wingman, Lieutenant Roy Rushing, added for more. Against this kind of precision and firepower, the Japanese formation simply collapsed. Their coordination was gone, their confidence shattered. By the afternoon, Ozawa's fleet had lost most of its aircraft. Waves of burning wreckage drifted across the Pacific. The few surviving Japanese pilots who limped back to their carriers were horrified. They had never seen anything like it. Their bullets bounced harmlessly off American planes, while even a short burst from a Hellcat could shred a Zero to pieces. Their 20mm cannons, once deadly, fired too slowly to make a difference. Many pilots didn't even have enough ammunition to finish a fight. The myth of the Zero's invincibility was gone. That evening, the Americans launched a massive counter-strike. Over 200 aircraft roared toward the retreating Japanese fleet. The Hellcats led the attack, escorting bombers and torpedo planes in one of the largest air operations of the war. Japanese carriers Taihu and Shokaku, veterans of Pearl Harbor, were hit and sunk. Others, like Zuikaku, burned and limped away. By nightfall, the Imperial Navy's carrier power had effectively ceased to exist. When the surviving Japanese pilots returned, they were met with silence on their flight decks. Dozens of empty parking spots where aircraft should have stood, mechanics with nothing to service. Officers staring into the sea, realizing that their air power was gone. Out of more than 400 planes launched that morning, barely a third returned, many riddled with bullet holes, others out of fuel. The entire foundation of Japanese naval aviation had collapsed in a single day. The Americans called it the greatest air victory in history, and by the numbers, it was. 400 Japanese aircraft destroyed for the loss of just over 100 American planes, most of those to fuel exhaustion or landing accidents, not enemy fire. The Hellcats' kill ratio, a 19-to-1, became the highest of any fighter in U.S. history. It wasn't luck. It was the result of design, training, and technology working in perfect harmony. Radar had allowed American commanders to see the battle before it even began. Coordinated radio networks kept formations tight. Self-sealing fuel tanks and thick armor saved pilots who would have died in any other plane. The Hellcat wasn't just a fighter, it was a symbol of industrial power and modern warfare. While Japan trained a few hundred new pilots a year, America trained tens of thousands. Every Hellcat pilot was replaceable, every loss recoverable. The Zero, by contrast, demanded perfection from pilots who no longer existed. The Battle of the Philippine Sea was more than just a victory, it was the end of Japan's dream of air dominance. From that point forward, the Imperial Navy would never again launch a major carrier offensive. Desperation would soon drive them toward kamikaze tactics, a final acknowledgement that their once proud air arm had been destroyed. And at the center of it all stood the F6F Hellcat, the unglamorous machine that ended an empire's aerial ambitions. In the years that followed, the Hellcat became a legend in its own right. It continued serving into the Korean War, its rugged frame perfect for ground attacks and carrier operations. But its true legacy lies in that June morning of 1944, when a squadron of American pilots climbed into their cockpits and changed the course of the Pacific War. The Japanese had entered the day believing they were about to relive Pearl Harbor. Instead, they experienced their own version of it, only this time, they were on the receiving end. And as the smoke cleared over the Philippine Sea, one truth became undeniable: the Hellcat didn't just dominate the skies, it buried the Zero's legend forever.